are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. Our guest is just a little delayed this afternoon, so I'm going to go ahead with the introduction, and we'll hope that she's back by that time. Our guest today is MJ Moores. MJ is the author of The Chronicles of Zanya series, the Shadow Phoenix series, and the Flawed Attraction romance series. She's also the author of the Demon series, which we will be focusing on today. MJ has a great deal of editing experience. As an editor, she's worked both in small Canadian presses and as a freelancer, but she's leaving all of that behind to start spending more time aiding independent authors. And that is us, or some of us, anyways. So I would like to thank MJ in advance for the generous knowledge she's going to be sharing with us this afternoon. Before we begin our conversation, I would also like to say that all MJ's series are, here we go, all MJ's series are, all MJ's series are completely different. I'm quite fond of her Shadow Phoenix series, which falls in the steampunk genre, so I don't want to pigeonhole her writing in any way. And I just see her in the side here. I'm just going to say, hi, MJ.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. So we have you on audio today? Is this what we're doing?
This is what we have.
Okay. All right. Not a problem. I'll just finish off here. But today's conversation is about demon tales, and it has me laughing with its brash, bold humor. It also has me pondering the many types of humor there are, and questioning whether I can say a certain word in public. So thank you. So thank you, MJ, for making me laugh, think, and grow. These are my favorite things. Welcome to Fika. Except that we've lost her again. And now she's back. MJ is unpredictable, just like she is in her writing. Okay, you never know what you're going to get. Welcome back, MJ.
Thanks for having me, Vicky.
And welcome to Fika. I was just saying how Demon Tales has caused me to think, grow, and laugh, and these are my favorite things. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, yay. I'm so happy.
So I'm not going to ask you how you are today because I'm feeling that frazzled would be the word that would come to mind. No problem. For those who are watching, you're just going to get stuck looking at me. Okay? So just get used to it, settle in, and look at me. But we will hear MJ's beautiful voice along the way. So, Miss MJ, would you like to tell us a little bit about Demon Tales for our listeners and our watchers so that they can get a better grasp of what we're talking about?
Yes, of course. Basically, it's a secret government agency who deal with things that go bump in the night and often during the day. Their headquarters is based out of Aurora, Ontario, so it's very much Canadian content, but they have divisions all across the province. Think sort of Men in Black meets Supernatural, and that's what basically the series is about.
And it is very, very funny. And I'm not going to mention, like, if you're Canadian, if you're anywhere and somebody writes about your local area, it's fun to see the places that you go to. And that, so that's an extra bonus if you're from Ontario as well.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not mentioning any specific coffee places because if they want me to mention them, they can sponsor me. Okay, so so obviously MJ is laughing about all of this because she does. I guarantee you, she does have a great sense of humor. So MJ, I'm just going to say this word out in public and get it over with so that we can discuss more of what we were talking about, the different types of humor earlier. Okay?
Are you sure?
I don't know. I don't know if I should say the F word on the radio.
I know, right? All those
Okay.
4 letters?
I have never said this word in public, which amazes me. Because, and it just, so here it goes. The word fart is very dominant in some of her writing. And so I had to question myself. And no, I've never really said that in public before. So this is a first. And you all got to witness it. And we talked about the different types of humor. Like, there's there's sarcastic humor, there's satire, but this is what would you call it?
Well, I mean, technically it is lowbrow or toilet humor, specifically when in, the prequel, particularly, and with even book 4, Double Dog Daria, where there's a dragon going around, leaving certain clouds of essence, shall we say. It all tends to come out of, a certain orifice, and, you can't help but laugh, we hope. But yeah, it's much more lowbrow humor, but you want to be able to, or at least Nancy, my partner, and I, we want to be able to reach all types of readers with all different types of humor. And while it is true that in the prequel, the rabbits do fart a sort of hallucinogen, it's funny. We don't overuse it. We don't say it all the time. We don't, draw attention to it as, turning your head and saying, aren't we funny? Because then it's not funny, right?
No. And there's a little bit of for some people there's almost a little bit of shock value that all of a sudden this is like there you are.
Yeah.
But it is a word. I mean, I considered for the use of the show using the word flatulence, and I thought, no, Vicky, you have to grow. Okay, you have to say this word. You have to be able to do it. But it is definitely a part of the story. It's not like it just goes in there. I mean, these are I'm sorry, Brian has some comments and I was reading them at the same time. Okay, just hold a second, Brian. Okay. So these are killer bunnies with little horns whose flatulence, I'm going back to that now, is of a magical variety and causes some problems, right? So how can you, I mean, what other weapon would like little tiny killer bunnies with horns have?
Exactly. I mean, they're supposed to be cute and sweet and, the least, likely to cause harm. And, you think of, a variety of different things over the years where we've seen evidence of killer bunnies in different mainstream and not so mainstream movies and shows. And this is just sort of our take on it. This is another version of, sort of farce. Where we're taking a known concept and using it in our work to help the reader relate potentially to something that they are already familiar with.
And so it is it's very much Men in Black humor.
Really. Oh yeah.
And it's almost something I could see a young Jim Carrey playing in, like Mask or something, with the eyes. Like, can't you see him playing? I would think Dodge, maybe.
Yes.
I could see that. Oh, sorry. Brian has also asked, do you feel that has been influenced by specifically Canadian comedians like Royal Canadian Air Force?
Well, I personally didn't watch the Royal Canadian Air Force. That's not necessary to say that I haven't seen clips from that throughout my life. And I know that my writing partner, Nancy Pattenden, is familiar with the Royal Canadian Air Force. But I mean, I'm even thinking about British humor like Monty Python.
Yeah, I could see Killer Bunnies.
What, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's right there.
So that was, yeah, I was leaning in that direction as well. I can see that.
Yeah, and it's not to say like they're very similar humor because they sort of they are they stem from a similar past and that sort of thing. But I mean, like you said, the book is more than just about rabbits with flatulence.
Yes, no, it's just it was causing me a lot of grief. Those bunnies. What they did to Newmarket was one thing, but what they were doing to me. And my vocabulary was another. And you see, MJ, what did I say? There's my husband right on cue saying, farting bunny, now you have my attention. I told you it was going to create problems in this household. They're still in it. No, but isn't that the point? Like maybe, you say lowbrow, and that makes us think, that's what the people who aren't so smart do. But Monty Python does. Air Force, like these are all highly,
regarded
in light, and they do that kind of humor. So I think it's something that we all sort of maybe need to check ourselves, on.
Yeah.
Like it's and grow a little, because it is biological. Like it's not like you can go through life without some of these things happening.
Well, I mean, you also have to think too, humor comes from, like, it stems from all sorts of different things. And, from day one, probably back with the cave people, somebody probably laughed at somebody else with something strange, sounding, coming out there, after eating bison or whatever, and that sort of thing. So it's ingrained in us. And just while we do tend to look down on it, sometimes if it's used in the right way, you can't help but give a little giggle or laugh. And like I said, there's a wide variety of humor throughout the entire series, and even including the Killer Bunnies. It's not really called Killer Bunnies, it's the prequel, but even Nancy and I refer to it as our Killer Bunnies book. Yes, how can you not, right? But still, it's one of those things where it jumps out at you, and it was a conscious decision that we made because we wanted people who read our work to realize that we want to be all encompassing. It's not just highbrow, it's not just satire, it's all humor. And that's something that Terry Fallis inspired us to do, because we both went to several of his workshops on humor. And he says that even he will work in some toilet humor into his books, not because it's lowbrow, but because you never know who's going to be reading your work and whom you might get a laugh from.
Well, this is the thing. And now I'm going to just get Brian's comment over, and I'm not going to stop reading the comments because I feel like it's now become just an issue of getting me to say this word over and over again. All farts are magical, but some more so than others. Very profound.
Yes, very
profound. Now, Ben, I don't know if Ben has read these books or not, but he brings up something that Ben, have you read these books? I love that the role of trickster in mythology often uses lowbrow humor to knock us out of our ego. And that's also another point, because I haven't, but I want to now. Thank you, Ben. You'll get me more guests.
Well, Ben, you're right on with that, because it does come from mythology, right?
And the antagonist is a trickster god. We decided he was a god, didn't we?
Yes. So at first, they thought it could be a trickster spirit rabbit from the Chippewa or Ojibwe mythology, and they were wrong, and that's what causes one of the problems, because they look at it from that perspective. But then when they finally realize it's an actually one of 400 Aztec rabbit gods that like to go to drunken parties. And this is a real thing. You can actually look this up. And we do our research, Nancy and I. I mean, everything is based on either known mythology, cryptology, or familiar monsters that have come across our page over, history. So the Aztecs, I'm going to Centizen Tochican. So that's the group of the rabbits, those 400 rabbits. And the one in particular in our book is Tepo Quetzal. Again,
None of us know.
None of us really know. Like, I have never heard this Aztec spoken aloud, but yeah. So it's real. It's out there. We're not making this stuff up. Maybe
what you're doing is pulling in what was and changing it into a story for today. And that's what we've been discussing a lot. That's what a lot of the fictional books we've been doing. So folklore in our own tales is becoming a big thread throughout Fika with Vicky.
Nice.
Thank you for contributing to that, MJ.
My pleasure.
So now moving along, so the point is to open yourself up. Just don't put your nose in the air. You don't know what's going to make you laugh and what you're going to eventually end up saying in public. Okay. So you mentioned that these were Aztec gods, a group of 400.
Yeah.
And being respectful for other stories and things. Now, because of that, and because of things that were in book 4, you thank in your acknowledgments Deanna Big Canoe of the Chippewa of Georgina Island for telling you about the Chippewa culture. How important do you think it is to have consultants when writing stories about other people and other stories of different cultures?
Well, honestly, I think it varies. I do think it's important, especially when you personally are not familiar with a culture or a diversity that you would like to be able to include in your work. And both Nancy and I, we don't know anybody personally other than Deanna now. We know some people as acquaintances, but not as good friends who are Indigenous. And so we thought, okay, well, we're basing one of our main characters, Junior. She's 13. She's a part, they call her Junior. Her real name is Aisha Big Canoe. And Deanna gave us permission to use her last name as sort of an homage and a thank you in the story. But, she's a native Indigenous girl who's a genius and has her own special brand of magical intuition, I guess. And so we wanted to make sure that not only the different cultural aspects that we're bringing in, but our character for Aisha or Junior was very true to form, not stereotypical, but at the same time still represented their culture with truth and honesty. And so it was very important for us to actually go out to Georgina Island and connect with the people, which is why we did that. We had an opportunity to hear a gentleman, an author by the name of Derek Newman Style, speak on including diversity and culture in your work, even if you aren't familiar with it, and the different ways that you can go about being true to those communities. So that worked for us to be able to go to the source. But sometimes, especially if your character isn't a main character, doing research, being a part of online forums and chats with people who are a part of that community is often enough to bring forth a believable and true character that's not falling back on stereotype. So, research sometimes is enough, where you don't necessarily need an actual consultant.
If you check yourself, I think it's important to know yourself and how, just watch what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think
Don't
it's
make
also,
assumptions.
yeah, but I think it's also interesting that, sometimes I think it is good to go to someone that you don't really know, that isn't a friend, because they'll be more honest with you, perhaps.
In a way, yes, but you don't necessarily always get those quirky little nuggets that
Yeah, they're
a
more
friend would
polite,
give
maybe.
you. But you might. I mean, Deanna was very open with us. She took us into her home. I mean, honestly, it's a funny story. I really should share it with you. We went to the island. We didn't, unfortunately, do our research ahead of time, so we didn't realize that the local government building closed at noon. And so we were just going to go there and chat with one of their representatives. We didn't make an appointment ahead of time. This was just us having a day out and outing. We get there, we walk all the way across the island, and that was a very long walk. I was in sandals, not runners. And we went for a couple miles. We finally got there, and it was like 15 minutes after they closed. So we looked at each other, we ate our lunch that we had brought, and we were like, okay, we're here. What do we do? So we started the long trudge back to the ferry. And by the time we got there, I had such blisters on my feet. It was not funny. These sandals were not the right things to wear by any means, even though it was a hot day. So I started, we went to the little corner store. I picked up some Band-Aids, and then I sat down on the grass in front of somebody's property just to be able to put the Band-Aids on. And Deanna walks out of her house, because it happened to be her property that I rested my tush on. And she was concerned about us. She's like, are you okay? Is there something I can do to help? And we basically confessed our, silliness of not preparing ahead of time. And she's like, oh, well, that's unfortunate to come all this way. Why don't you come in? And we'll sit down and you can ask me anything you want. And
Oh, fantastic. I was going to
Right?
say, how did you find someone? Well, that was very fortuitous.
Yeah, so I literally sat down on the woman's front lawn and she invited us in for tea. So, it's one of those happy circumstances where it all worked out. And
it worked out perfectly.
It did. And she really did open up to us about her personal life and community and the life on the island. So that it was tremendous. It was a wonderful experience.
Good. I am glad. I'm going to go to comments now. I'm going to take them out of order because Ben's particularly makes sense with what we're discussing now. So, and making sure not to fall back on reoccurring tropes. Queer characters being brutally killed off has been done to death.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And so that's it. Like just think like people, right? Like just think everybody as people and not going. And back to our mythological discussions. Brian says, I find it refreshing to see writers bring magical folks into the modern world using a humorous touch. This was a popular theme in the 50s. Yeah, I'm old. We know this, Brian, but fell out of favor. Does any kind of story fall out of the favor? Fate?
I think there will always be those people who gravitate toward a certain kind of story. And I mean, it's really big now. They're bringing in, alternate fairy tales, twisted fairy tales.
Right. No, it's a whole world out there. And we're just like touching the very surface. Like, I'm going to be doing this forever. So you're stuck with me. Okay. I actually have an interview for February 22nd already booked. Okay. And David would like to know, just curious, I didn't hear what island she was on and where it is. He's very curious about those things. So
it's Georgina Island, and it is in the township of Georgina, which is near Keswick, just sort of north of Newmarket.
Right, and it's like by Deer Lake. Is it Deer Lake Road? Yeah, that whole area. So just a little bit north.
You got it,
David. Georgina Island in like Simcoe.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we've all pinpointed it, people.
There you go.
So aside from that, is there anything, any other areas we should be more respectful or knowledgeable on when writing? Like, you're out there, you've been editing, you see what's going on. What should writers be careful? Not careful, but we all want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So, is
Right.
there anything you can think of that is like been overdone or?
Well, I mean, like you said, and what Ben mentioned too, you need to be aware of the stereotypes that exist so that you're not replicating them and that sort of thing. And if you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask questions, right? To find
Mhm.
people to read your work and have them say, oh, well, is this really PC, or have you talked to anyone about this? And try. You got to keep an open mind and not take offense, but generally speaking, if you're writing about something that you don't know firsthand, right there, that's your light bulb moment, the alarm bells going off. That's where you need to do due diligence and look
And
in a
research.
little further. And because it doesn't really matter, like whether you're writing about someone who's a part of the LGBTQ plus community, or you're writing about a character who is missing their legs, or someone who has autism. If you don't have experience with these situations or these types of individuals and what they go through, it is so easy to fall into the trap of stereotype. So do your research, talk to people, and if you can't find somebody like we found Deanna, there are online forums, and even just at your own local library, there often you can tap into human existence, and find ways of connecting with people.
Well, even if someone has lost a child
Yeah.
or any of those things that are of a sensitive manner, it's not about being PC or, not getting into trouble. It's just about kindness and
It is.
understanding and including, and it's your book sale. Bottom line is your book sales are going to reflect it if you're not, right?
Yes. Because somebody will point out the fact that you're making assumptions, and then everybody will know. And so you just
Oh my God. And
it,
everybody will know.
well, yeah, and it's like, oh,
No, you don't
that
want them to
author
know that.
doesn't do due diligence, that author makes assumptions, don't read that author, we don't want that.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
We just want to be true to human nature.
And I think it allows you to have fuller characters,
Oh,
right?
totally.
Because you're not falling back on those stereotypes. So you have to fill them out. And this is something that you do with your little drop-ins of honestly, MJ, if I hadn't seen you in that picture, Star Wars picture, I would know you were a geek just from your writing.
Aw.
In the most, yeah, in the greatest sense of the word. I love geeks. I may be one. So, but I don't want to step into that kind of honorable role without being sure. Um, so you use music, you use hairstyles, you use these kind of things to let us know, to show us, not tell us.
Right. I mean, we want to take a look at people's quirks, what makes them unique. And that is what is going to help somebody remember your character. You don't want to be over the top with, it's always the person who scratches their goatee necessarily. And I have a friend who's concerned about that in her own writing right now. So she's probably laughing as she listens to us talk. But I mean, it's all in moderation, right? You need to pick something, is it a doll collection? Do they always wear red? Is it like a pop of color, not like all red or all black? That is a particular, if you're going for goth, great. But if it's a goth person who always has, a red flower or something, or a red hair scarf, or whatever it is, what is it about that color? What is it about that symbolism that is important to that character? And that's what your reader is going to remember, more than them just being goth, or more than them just being a collector, that sort of thing. So you don't want to be over the top with it. It needs to reflect
Right, of course. Everything
realistic.
in in
Right?
moderation and balance, right?
Right.
It's just, I personally believe the days of her long flowing hair are, uh, God, they are for me. That's like maybe in like extreme romances, but that's about right. I mean, I'm old. I've read a lot. I'm losing patience now. No. I love everything I read. No, not everything, but so.
They
So
told
this
you to say that, didn't they?
yes, every so often I have to remember people are listening. These aren't just my thoughts. Okay, so when we talk about Demon Tales, it is a book that has a cast. It actually has a cast of characters. Like honestly, this needs to be a TV show. Okay, it's sort of like the opposite of Due South. It needs to be a TV show because it's very, very visual. So when you have so many characters, it can get somewhat confusing. And I'm asking for a friend here. So, what are your best tips on keeping them separate and everything clear to the reader?
Okay. Well, the first biggest thing is do your best to avoid introducing a lot of characters in the first, say, 3 chapters.
Right.
Just because we're starting out, we're getting to know our characters and the storyline. And if we start talking about 12 different people all associated with the agency or what happened previously, it's an info dump, really. It's too much backstory. And what we really want is the nugget of what's happening in this moment. And we don't necessarily need to know
The
names of all these people. I mean, you can just even refer to them as, the boss, as opposed to saying their name. You could refer to them, as what it is that they do, as opposed to who they are the first time we hear about them. And then later on, once you've established a little bit more of the main characters for this particular story, because like you said, we're hoping Demon Tales is going to be 28 books. 28
Oh, because I was thinking the other day, there is so much that still needs to be told.
Yes, it's a long series. We're doing the entire alphabet A to Z and 2 numbers, 13 and 666. But we are also planning to do special editions, special holiday novellas. Of course, we have our prequel, and our first Christmas holiday was out just this past Christmas. So those are in addition to the 28 stories we sort of pre-planned. Not that we've pre-planned all 28, but we have this arc. We can talk more about that after. But so I mean, we know we're going to be covering a lot of material, but we're going to have some time to cover it. And what basically works for us is making sure that, okay, if the story revolves around 2 agents in particular, then we will focus 85% of the story on those 2 agents. And then the others sort of in the peripheral. So you don't have to remember who they are constantly, but the more you read the series, the more the names and the characters will crop up and the more you learn about them. So that makes it easier for the reader to latch on to 2 or 3 people as opposed to 12 in one go.
No, I can see that because I was like watching your writing very closely and I was thinking, oh, this is what she did here. So it's basically seeing more from Dodge, and I'm not going to remember her name right now, his partner.
Yali.
Yes, Yali's perspective. And that makes that clear for that book.
Yeah, and I mean, in the beginning, the prequel introduces us to Dodge's original partner, Jimmy, and what happened about why he had to, totally in book 1, Assassin Eco Corpses. All we know about Dodge, like you might hear his name once or twice in general, and it's just basically to say, yeah, he's off somewhere on a mission, and he'll be back when he's back. And he's like, we don't have time to deal with this right now. We've got a crisis in front of us.
Right, Dodge is not in town.
Right.
Yeah,
And so
because you don't have to focus on every character in every book.
totally. And then we get to know Dodge and Yali in book 2 when it makes more sense that we're focusing on their story.
So no, it does make, and thank you for clearing that up. Not that I have a personal interest in it. Okay. So here I feel that Mr. Ben is getting out of hand because he says, I don't know, retro hairstyles are coming back. We're in the area of mullets again.
Yeah.
Ben, first of all, I feel that's more of a threat. I lived through this once. I don't want to see it again. And aren't mullets really more of a idea, a lifestyle than just the hair?
I would echo that.
He is now laughing. Show. And Brian says, I got the 2-in-1 demon books. Nice concept. 1 and 2 demon books. Nice concept, by the way. The covers are quite striking. Did you get a graphic artist to do them? No, she did. She designs all her own covers. Tell us about that, MJ.
Well, thank you. Yes, and I do believe Brian's talking about the print book. What we're doing is we're combining, since they're novellas, we're putting 2 of them together, and what we've made is a flip book. So you read the first story in one direction, close the book, flip it, and read the second story in the other direction.
So he would love that.
Yeah, and so we have placed the ebook cover for each story, one on the front and one on the back, so that you can see that they are 2 separate stories but part of the same collection. And for about the last 8 years or so, maybe 10, I've been teaching myself how to work with graphics in Photoshop. And I'm probably at the point now, because it's more of a hobby than anything, where I'd call myself an intermediate graphic designer. And I go and I do webinars, and I go to workshops, and I hear from the people who are doing this professionally full time how you work with layout and what to consider for genre. So I'm constantly learning, and I'm able then to help us keep costs down, because we are indie authors. Nancy and I decided to let me try doing the graphics and cover art for our series. We went to online forums and asked questions of professionals and of readers, what they thought of what we're doing and what we're creating, how it fits with our genre, the marketability, and that's how we came up with our branding for that series. And we wanted to make them nice and bright and colorful to show this isn't a dark series at all, even though it may touch on some dark concepts at times. But generally, it should be like one of the Men in Black movies or one of the later Supernatural TV show episodes, where you've got this undercoating, this layer of light or humor that there's so much crap that's been thrown at you so far, that an alien exploding in your face or, having to deal with another vampire is just another day on the job. And, there's a certain sort of levity that you have to take with that. So that's the approach we wanted. And we needed to make sure that showed in our covers, as well as getting across the fact that they're urban fantasy. But yeah, we had it's not an isolated thing where, Nancy said to me, okay, this is what we should put on our cover, do it. It's us sitting down, looking at what's out there, researching, and getting feedback.
It was a gradual thing.
Oh,
a gradual process and a learning process. So it took a long time.
Yeah.
Also, I think Brian would like the idea of the 2 books back to back, because that's something they used to do back in his day.
Oh, yes.
He has commented on with the 2 on. So yeah, it's that kind of novel. It's like, it's not a novella. It's not huge. You grab it, you read it in an afternoon, right? Yeah. And you think that's fun. And they're priced accordingly. And speaking of price, because, time goes on, MJ, being the generous person that she is, offered a special offer because of
Yeah.
Fika today. So you want to tell us more about that, MJ?
Well, we're having a flash sale today, don't you know? We're giving away books 1 and 2 for free on Amazon. That's the platform we're with. The ebooks, of course, not the print. Those cost a pretty penny to get out there. But yeah, just in honor of getting the word out and telling people about the series, we wanted to make it more accessible. Not that $1.99 isn't accessible.
No, they're not.
The novella, but I mean, in order to take a chance on something new, sometimes if it's in the 99 cent or free category, you're more willing to check it out. And so we just wanted to make that more accessible for people, your listeners and followers.
So you can go directly to Amazon and look up MJ and get those books 1 and 2 in the series for free. And how long are we going to be? How long do they have?
Basically, midnight tomorrow night. It's a 2-day sale.
Midnight tomorrow night. So this is even going up on SoundCloud tonight. So you listeners can also take a chance of this. If you're not sure about going right to Amazon, you can hop over to Fika with Vicky on Facebook, and I'm going to put those links up this afternoon.
Sweet.
So take a chance on this because you will be laughing. And you don't have to say the word in public afterwards. You're not doing a show. Okay. Once again, before the next topic, we're back to Ben, who says, now I'm not saying this word.
No.
I would read the blank out of a book that started with he ran his fingers lovingly through his long flowing mullet. Now I explained to you, Ben, that I lived through this before, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. Okay. Okay. It's not Brian says, okay, Brian, show Brian. I bought my paperback from MJ and Nancy one very hot summer day at their booth where they kindly autographed it. Oh, so you have met the MJ. So what are you flaunting, that you've met MJ in person? Is that you have an autograph where Measly Little Me only has ebooks?
No.
And while we're talking about MJ's generosity, she also has a fantastic newsletter, which also quite often has free novellas or prequels or what on them. So go to her website, which is in the description of the show on all the platforms, and you will find her website and you can sign up for her newsletter. I did just this week. So,
yeah, it's great. I call it sort of my starter pack, where you get the prequel to each of the different series that I've written. So there's 4 free prequels that you will not find anywhere else.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And then you can be in an elite group.
Mm-hmm.
with it. Okay, so now we've talked about Nancy, your partner, and you do write with a partner on the Demon Tales. Can you tell us how that works?
We do it a couple of different ways, actually. We were initially introduced to the idea by another collaboration partnership, Tobin Elliott and Dale Long. They write sort of horror and supernatural kind of things. But they came to they did a writer's workshop in our area, and they talked a lot about how they will take turns doing one chapter and then giving it to somebody else and doing another chapter. And Nancy and I looked at each other and we were kind of like, whoa, I don't think I could be in your head enough to be able to do that. So originally we started this project because this was her idea, and I just basically said, well, I'll help you write the series because it's a pretty big idea. With the 28 plus books. And she was all excited for that because we've been good friends for a while. So she wrote book 1, like literally just, we sat down, we talked about it, we brainstormed, created a loose outline with the inciting incident, main plots, sort of where we figured it was headed. And she wrote it. And then she came back to me and she said, okay, here it is. And then I went through with my editor's hat on and my reader's hat on, and I went and I added some of my words and my phrasing, But I also encouraged her to show in certain areas where she was telling, and the natural stuff that goes along with helping someone either beta read or do sort of a substantive edit on. And then she took that back and made the changes and accepted or didn't accept some of the things that I had suggested. And so we chat about it. We'd always get together at a coffee shop, which I won't name because, like you said, they're not paying you for advertisement here.
But if they did.
Right? And so, we would have these sessions where we would discuss where things did go, where they could potentially go instead, and how to make things a little more cohesive, because she's a pantser, so a discovery writer, and I'm more of a planner, a plotter. So the two of us working together is two very different styles. Then when it's my turn, so I mainly, we discussed the idea for book 2, and we did all of our standard brainstorming, planning, plotting of the general form of what we wanted to see. Then I took it away and I wrote it, and she edited it and added her touches in and her humor. She's funnier than I am. She's the one with a better sense of humor. But and so I did a lot of learning from her about how to integrate the humor that we wanted to be able to include. And so it's been a learning process for me along the way. She has things that she's really good at. I have things that I'm really good at. I like detail. She's less detail oriented. So we meet in the middle. However, then we came up with this idea on the spur of the moment where, why don't we write a prequel? We need something to just give away to people to get them interested in our stories. And we both looked at each other and said, I don't have time to write a whole story. So we decided to do what Tobin and Dale did, and that was take turns writing a chapter, even though in the beginning we looked at each other and said, no way. But it actually worked out well because we had that loose structure where we knew what sort of the main problems were going to be. We knew what the inciting incident was, and we would leave little notes for each other when we were finished a chapter where we'd say, I kind of think it's headed in this direction. And then we'd read through the chapter that, the other person wrote. We'd get the notes, and then we carry on. And we just kept going back and forth like that. Yeah, there were some plot holes and some things that we missed along the way. But that's where we made sure we got some beta readers involved to make sure that it did flow properly, and that, it wasn't just us getting lost in our own magnificence.
Which is so easy to do. Right? I mean, really. Especially when you're MJ. I mean, there's so much to work with. Is that what the M stands for?
So it really, most of the time, we take turns writing the stories and editing each other's work. But occasionally, when we do something outside of the 28 books we had originally planned for, that's when we deviate the way we write and we take turns with the chapters. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, but it's making sure we're on the same page right from the get-go and doing those really fun brainstorming sessions. I mean, can you think, how the conversation started with the two of us? Like, okay, so Easter's coming up. Let's write a book about rabbits. And then she throws out the bit about, what about killer bunnies? Like, and then it's being silly and funny and letting ourselves be kids again, I guess.
Yeah,
where then you rein it back in and say, all right, let's make sense of this.
Brainstorming is incredible and a great deal of fun in itself. So when you did mention in your bio that you had a tendency towards procrastination, and I am very interested how that works in the life of a writer because my friend is very curious. So do you find that having a partner like this keeps you a little more on track?
Sure.
Or not?
Well, I mean, yes, because our goal is to get out at least 2 books a year, one from her, one from me. If we get more than that out, like a special edition or something, that's, bonus material in our mind. But, at least every 6 months, hopefully it keeps our readers interested and up to date and remember that we exist. So it, for, having a deadline, a firm deadline, like right now, the next book, which I'll be doing the main writing on, letter H, we don't have a title for it yet because really we've just been bantering back and forth about the content of it. It's going to be due out on Halloween, so October 31st.
Fun.
So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I don't need to write that right now. This is the procrastination part setting in, right? It only takes me a month to write a book. So like a novella. So, all right. So if we're putting it out at the end of October, then I need to make sure it's done. I work my way backwards. And so I'm thinking, well, yeah, okay. So probably by the beginning of September, I should get cracking on this. So this is my procrastination coming in. So I know how long it takes me to do things. And I will push it off as long as possible.
Until the last
second. And then that threat of the deadline looming. Oh my goodness, do the words fly? But I work well under pressure.
I think some people do. And I think also, is it possible that all that time, every so often it pops into your head and you get a few more ideas about it? Like you've been playing around with it before you're actually writing it?
Exactly. And it's the same way with my other series as well. I am not, like, some people say they get writer's block. And I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that I personally don't get writer's block because for me, if I am at a point where I physically am not sure what happens next, I will just move away from the page or the screen, wherever I am, and I will find a different way of tapping into my creativity and my imagination that gets me back to the story and allows me to focus really on the what if this happened next, what if that happened next, what would be the consequences, and just going out and roller skating. And yes, I do have roller skates. I do not have roller blades. So I'm a little old fashioned there, or going for a walk in the woods.
Right, you know what those are.
Right? And Ben with the mullet. So I'm, I physically will remove myself from either the keyboard or the pen or the pencil and just get back into
physical
nature, right? And
because physical will allow your mind to work things out.
Exactly. So then I'm not really procrastinating and avoiding writing. I'm exploring my writing at that point and allowing my brain to envision the possibilities and decide where it wants to go next. And then I will know when I'm ready to sit down again and start writing. So that's how I'm able to justify procrastination.
You spent more time justifying procrastination than any other question here.
Right? This is important.
Yeah. Okay, so for anyone listening out there are reasons. All right, be patient. Be patient with them. So we have another question. Oh, Brian is saying that as a youth, he had roller skates that strapped to the regular shoes. As for a mullet, I've never had the hair for it. Okay. we're not, you know what, Brian? Not everybody does.
No.
And still, you've had a full life without a mullet. So there you go. We have, because procrastination, it's time, MJ. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to ask you one more big question. With all your experience and things that you've done with independent publishing and being an author, what do you think is the one thing an indie author can do to mess with their writing career?
One thing?
Well, the biggest. Okay, I'll give you 2 or 3 things, but just don't procrastinate with the answer.
Okay, I won't. I'll be okay. So, believe in yourself.
Lack of confidence.
Just get rid of the whole imposter syndrome thing. we are all storytellers, period. It's a part of the human race. You have a story to tell. Who cares if someone else has told a version of it before? Tell me your version. And don't let that get in your way. Second, polish it. Like, learn about your craft, marketing, book production, editing. Never stop being a student.
Yeah,
You know, because we are all forever learning something new. I know I am. And I've been doing this for ages. And lastly, I would say learn how to take honest criticism. Whether that's, you know, in getting information back from an editor or a critique group, or, you know, even just yourself. When we have, you know, that devil in our mind that's going, you know, well, why did you write it that way? You shouldn't be using all those wases, or you shouldn't have, you know, that many ands in a row in a sentence. That's a run-on sentence, or that's a fragment. Get rid of those negative voices and focus instead on getting the words on the page and understanding where the criticism is coming from. If it's actually logical, consider it, have a discussion, and then look at it in the context of the greater part of your story.
And who it's coming from, and
Right.
what it means. I mean, there's no point being stubborn if it's going to hurt the book.
Exactly.
Because we want it to go out and do, and to have people read it. I mean, that's the bottom line, regardless of anything else. You want people to enjoy your story.
Definitely. And we want it to be out there. We don't want it stuck in the drawer or on your hard drive and nobody's reading it. Right?
Well, we may want it out there, but we tend to procrastinate. We'll even do a whole radio show to avoid it. Okay.
Remember, you need to procrastinate for good, not for evil.
Yes. Okay, so anyways, we have our good one for procrastination. Thank you, MJ, for joining us today. And it's been a real pleasure. And since you live so close, maybe we can do this again sometime.
I would love it.
But if you mess with your camera, I'm just going to have you drive over. Like,
oh,
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, you take care and we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Our guest next week will be Nick Roberts. And his first novel, Anathema, was the debut novel of the year at the Horror Authors Guild Awards. And his second novel, The Exorcist House, had me inviting him to Fika just minutes after I read it. It was fantastic. So it's all about horror next week, and we're going to have a great time, as we always do here. Well, I'm not going to say a lovely comment section, but a busy comment section we had today. Until then, may your coffee be hot and your stories sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great week.